The stream has begun. Oh, Ancient Gear. What's up, man? Long time no talk. Hope you're doing well. Uh, it's election day over here in America, and I'm praying and hoping that no one does anything stupid. I don't have a dog in the fight in this one. I it's not that I don't care who wins. I do care who wins, but what I ultimately care about is hate not being spread and multiplied. That's my big fear, and I think that's inevitable. I think that's going to happen. I think that's the only thing that's going to happen. Well, I think there's plenty that's going to happen, but I think that's the main thing that's going to happen, and I'm not too thrilled to see that happen. Not too thrilled to see what will happen. What will become of our country and whatnot. But I still try to remain optimistic. Who knows? Maybe the next president will bring some unity and peace to the fold. But anyways, I'm just chilling here. Uh, let's see. Well, I mean, what I got. I don't think anyone else has joined here. I got my guitar here. A little. I'm in drop. I'm in like drop C or something like that. I've been learning a new Sylvius Leopold Weiss song. If I can. It's a lot of fun. Anyways, um, yeah. So anyone, not Ancient Gear, if you're still on, say hi again or something. If not, I think I'm just talking to myself here, which is cool. Other people will tune in eventually when it's done. And I post it. So I guess I'm just gonna start talking, right? I'll fill people in as they join. I'll kind of jump back, but life changing stuff going on for me right now. It always seems like that's the case, right? And I'm always talking about, oh, you won't believe what just happened. In fact, every single video I post is me saying, you're not going to believe what just happened. um, but there's been a lot of things in the past, I'd say 3 months or so, that have really put a lot of things into perspective for me. And then a few things that happened that have shaken my world up in terms of like, oh, okay, well, I thought things were going this way and now they're going this way. And so I talk about a lot in my episodes and everything, like, oh, I quit my job, I quit my career of 15 years in software consulting, to pursue this whole God thing or whatever. Well, I'm going back, not necessarily to software consulting, but to software. Let me fix this 1 second. um I've been offered a position that I couldn't really turn down, especially given my financial situation right now and the fact that I'm trying to bring a child into the world. I understand that people can still raise children under certainly worse financial situations than I do, but I don't want to, in good faith, I wouldn't want to, if I have the opportunity to make a good living for my child, I feel like I should take it. Like it's not up to me anymore, kind of thing. It's not like, hey, where's my comfort level and what makes me happy and joyful, right, in my pursuits or whatever. It's like, no, it's not really about me anymore. And so, and by the way, that doesn't mean that I'm going to stop pursuing God and all this stuff, right? I'm going to continue my pursuits and I'm going to continue releasing episodes and stuff like that. But this job is going to be incredibly mentally demanding and taxing. So, like, my brain is like penguins on an iceberg. Only a certain amount of penguins can fit on. And whenever I learn new stuff that I learned before has to fall off. So I'm going to try my best to continue my pursuit. Um, Try to find the answers, even though I know that such a quest is futile, to say the least. I learned that the hard way in the past couple weeks, maybe a month or so. And but I'm not deterred that I may be. I'm not gonna stop. My journey's not over. My path is not over. Um, and I'm. It's not like I'm married to my new position, right? You know, it's gonna be what it's gonna be. If it turns into an awesome career, so be it. But yeah, so that's kind of the bit of news up front is that I am you'll no longer hear me begging for for money on the channel. I'm gonna anything I have that says like please donate or whatever. By the way, um, Ancient Gear, you actually so Ancient Gear and Ben, um, actually donated when I was in need, so I appreciate that. And then aside from that, there was only one other person, so my donation campaign didn't really work out, but it's okay. It's all good. No, nobody is by no means obligated to do anything there. But I will be taking anything that says donate down because yes, again, I'll be starting a new job soon. But anyway, so so along those lines, though, I wanted to kind of share a little bit of the dose of humility uh, that has fell in my lap, so to speak, over the past couple months. We're really well, yeah, the past couple months. I'm still struggling with the very thing that I sought to cure when I initially sought out. When I initially took plant medicine and tried to heal myself of depression, addiction, all that stuff. I'm still struggling with it. I don't think I ever will get over it. Frankly, I wear my boxing gloves. I have these little right there. You see it right there. So I still got the old boxing gloves there. I have between football and boxing, I probably have suffered. I'm not joking around. Probably about 5 or 6 concussions in my life. And so I'm starting to realize probably, and when I get this job and I get health insurance again, I'm gonna go to the doctor and try to see if I have like CTE or something because my impulsivity control is nothing, right? And one could argue that my impulsiveness is the whole reason why I took plant medicine in the first place. It's like, hey, I get a thought in my head. I'm like, oh, doing it, gonna do it. This, it's you could argue it's the reason I quit my career because I found God and all this stuff. It's like perhaps my problem isn't addiction. Probably, perhaps my problem is just impulsiveness, and perhaps there's a neurological reason via CTE. I don't know yet. I'm just speculating. So, but I do know that I have suffered a lot of concussions in my life, and that's not cool. Um, Missed the first minutes. Okay, so it's Ancient Gear. Sorry, I missed the first minutes. What job did you find? Oh, so I just found another job in software. I was really man, it's amazing actually to think of myself as a failure for having such a success as finding I mean, it's a really good position that I found. Kind of fell in my lap, and it's funny. I viewed myself as a failure for landing it because here I am on this religious pursuit, or I didn't even intend it for it to be a religious pursuit. It just turned into that. But I quit my career to. I mean, I had these amazing synchronicities and amazing visions and signs and all this stuff that I needed to quit my job and pursue this. And finances got the better of me, and I'm trying to bring a child into the world. And if I have the opportunity to make a good living for my child, I should do it. If I was my child, I would still forgive me for not, but I feel like there'd be a part of me that would look at my dad and say, you had an opportunity to make more money and you decided not to. I don't know. But anyway, regardless, I felt like kind of a loser for even thinking about going back into software. And then I accepted this job and I really felt like a loser. Again, this is really weird, paradoxical kind of like it's a tremendous success, and then I felt like a loser for getting successful there. And I was really down in the dumps about it, really, really down in the dumps about it. And along with being down in the dumps about it, I slipped up and partake in my addiction, and that made me only feel worse, et cetera, et cetera. But I had an epiphany that hit me at the peak of that, and it was like, what would Jesus think about losers, right? Someone who's failed. And I had this amazing realization that this is going to sound blasphemous, but please don't take it like that. Ooh, this is going to be tough to say, because it's what I'm about to say is just take it with a grain of salt. Don't leap down my throat and want to strangle me. Jesus Christ was a loser, straight up. Like, if if Jesus Christ threw his resume across the table to me, and I'm hiring someone for a position or something like that, and I look down at his bullet point resume and I'm like, okay, let's just see what we got here. Born to a poor family, and that you don't really see that on a resume, but seriously, like, you go down the list, it's like born in squalor. Um, I don't even know if he was really a successful carpenter or not, but certainly he stopped doing that and started wandering the hills, going about his father's work and whatnot. Basically, a vagrant, just roaming the countryside. You could go down the list. I mean, arrested, convicted, executed. It's like I'm looking at the. It's like he certainly didn't topple empires during his life, right? And so when you look, I think that Jesus Christ would identify tremendously with people who view themselves as losers, and the people who are dejected and rejected. I think that he would have an incredibly soft spot in his heart for them, and I'm kind of tearing up because it's such a beautiful thing. Um, but that's what I realized, is that Jesus Christ was a loser on paper, big time, big time. And the beautiful dichotomy is that he, of course, was the furthest thing you could possibly imagine from being a loser, in the spiritual kind of sense, and how we in our what we should truly strive and be ourselves. And like in that sense, he was the furthest thing from a loser you can possibly imagine. And what does that say about life? And what does that say about what we should and shouldn't do, and jobs and all this stuff? And so, yeah, sorry for that long-winded response, but I'm going back into software. Um, not too. I'll tell you this: I'm happy to make a living again. I'm happy to provide for my wife and eventually my kid. I'm not too terribly thrilled about the line of work per se, but I was good at it, so whatever. Let me see. Let me catch back up with you here. I feel like a loser too, but never had any success. Yeah, dude, dude, you're a young man, dude. Trust me. When I was your age, man. Believe me, when I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Life is long, and let's see what else you say. He was God. Well, okay, so loser in achievements, yes, but he was God. So man, my understanding. So you live in Greece, and Eastern Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, right? Man, I went to a Greek Orthodox church. Are you familiar with this book, The Way of the Pilgrim? Um, I was reading the Book of Thomas, and I don't remember which Logian or whatever they call it, Logian. Um, I don't remember which one it was, but the commentary. So they in this book, in this particular edition, they have like the original. I don't know, Greek or what. I don't think that's Greek. Maybe it is like the original Greek. What was written on the papyrus, and then they have the ink translated into English over here, but that's part of the book. Then let's see. So this is Logian 102. Then in the back of the book, they have the Logian. I still don't know how to pronounce it. The Logian, and then they have like this little part up here, and then they have the author's description down here. of what the Logian means. I randomly flipped to one day that really inspired me, and I don't remember which one it was, but when I was reading the author's interpretation, he mentioned something about some monks of the Eastern Orthodox tradition and how they were their means of connecting with Jesus was deep, basically transcendental meditation and introspection and I want to stop. I'm going to stop short of saying gnosis because that implies Gnostic, right? But if you look at the true definition of gnosis, it's like diving within oneself to find God. And they mentioned he mentioned these monks. I forget what they were called or whatever, but these monks were in pursuit of what's called the uncreated light, and it's basically it's so hard to anyways, I'm gonna try not to try. I'm gonna. Oh, by the way, so that book, The Way of the Pilgrim, is very profound in the sect of Eastern Orthodox, right? Eastern Orthodox Christianity, like this is like a big, like a awesome piece of literature for them. But again, I was attracted to this concept of the uncreated light. I was like, wait a second, what? This doesn't sound Christian. People meditating and finding Jesus within them. I was like, wait a second, uncreated light. And I started researching that. And I even went to an Eastern Orthodox church last week. And I will tell you this: it's not for me. It's not for me only because there's so much ceremony and stuff behind. I mean, I went to that service and it was 2 hours of awesome, actually really beautiful music. But I wanted to hear this stuff, man. I wanted to hear about the uncreated light, and it was just music, 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 chanting, 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 and then 15 minutes of the priest up there talking about just really basic stuff, and it makes sense to me. It's like that's kind of like the basic stuff that they would talk to the congregation about. They're not going to get into like really deeply philosophical, uncreated light with just the general public. So, but anyway, there's a monk called Maximus, and I want to say in like the latter part of the Roman Empire kind of thing, like right after the Counts of Nicemia or whatever the heck it's called. I'm sounding like an idiot, but there was this monk called Maximus, and he splintered away from the different schools of thought because, in his opinion, and this is the opinion that I fully subscribe to as well, um, school of thought over here was saying Jesus has only divine will, only divine. And then school of thought B, which was where Maximus was championing, says Jesus had both the will of God and the will of man. And that I have completely a billion, quadrillion, infinity% identified with because that's what I saw several times, multiple times. I mean, I've encountered Jesus on my mystical experiences by now probably about 7 times or whatever. And each time, well, really the first two, he just kind of showed himself and then he said a couple things. And then he said, I am life itself. And basically implying that he is me and I am him and he is you and he is him and her and them and he is your neighbor and he is your enemy but if that's the case and if he is we, then we are he. And if he's saying that, then that means that you are your neighbor and you are your enemy. And that's why you need to love your enemy, love your neighbor like you love yourself and love your enemy because you are that enemy. And when you think about the interconnectedness of human beings, it makes perfect sense. It's like your enemy has a friend, right? You have a friend. And it's just amazing to think that with the different carrots and with a different set of carrots and sticks, you would be that guy, or whatever. And certainly we are villains in other people's lives. And so I don't know. There's this beauty. to that, but that's just part of it. The That's just a tiny smidge of, well, actually, that's the largest part of what is amazing to me about my Jesus versus what I hear about in the Bible and stuff. I identify more with the Book of Thomas based on what I've learned and saw on the other side. Uh, but I also identify with the Eastern school of thought, big time, the Eastern Orthodox school of thought of he was a man, like straight up a man. He was 100% God and 100% man. And in a way, he looks at you and says, "So are you." When he looked at me and said, "If I can do it, you can do it," I believed him. And I had another experience here recently, unbelievably amazing, unbelievably amazing experience on MDMA. I can't tell you how freaky. I would trade all of my other experiences for that one experience on MDMA. And the man told me, he said, "Hey, Andrew, everything that you are struggling with right now, I also struggled with." And I was like, "What? What? No, you didn't." He's like, "Oh," he basically was like, "You had better believe me, I did." And there was a lot more to that conversation, but that's going to probably be a future episode, but away on of that conversation. He said, he's like, the only way that I could have understood what it was to be a human was to be a human. And it's like, that's it. That's all. I mean, it's amazing to me. Now I can't prove this. I cannot prove any of this. And man, I am going to face. Well, here's the thing. No, I'm not going to say that. I was about to say I'm never going to get famous enough or whatever that people will even want to chime in. Just on this. Who knows what would happen? I don't know. Maybe someday some people find my channel years down the road, and there's some kind of grassroots movement where now I would get real backlash with a ton of people swarming in and tearing stuff down or whatever. So, but regardless, that view of Jesus is not very popular. um, Specifically, he is we, and we are he. And if and the implication of if that's the case, then what's the source for him? And we're all the source. We're all part of that source too. How does he fit into the whole grander thing? It's like these are all questions that could freaking get me killed by by I live in Houston, Texas, y'all. It's like, whew, man. Don't get me started. Uh, but also this idea that Jesus Christ was a man that suffered what we suffer and had to overcome what we have to overcome. And it's, again, I'm getting emotional right now because it's such a beautiful freaking answer to it all. It's so beautiful. It has to be that way. I don't understand like how this is a scary thing. I know he's supposed to represent the purest of pure, but what if he had to overcome stuff to do that? I think that's even more inspirational. It's more inspirational to me that he was a man than if he was God. Um, and the thing is he's both, and he's looking at you, looking at all of us, and saying that we are both. It's so amazing to me. I don't. Anyways, sorry, I went off on a tangent here. Let me let me and how does hell fit in that? Isn't the will of man corrupted and evil and sinful? No, I don't think so. Well, I do think so, but it's not. It's this is okay. So let me read your question louder, so or more articulate. I mumbled over what you said. You say, "How does hell fit into that? Isn't the will of man corrupted and evil and sinful?" Yes and no. I feel like that. I don't think that hell was. I don't. It's hard for me to say that hell is a real place. First of all, I've definitely encountered things that are very much how they would describe how people would describe it. But I don't know if it's an actual real place, so to speak. I think that there's God, and then there's like removal from God. And if we want to call the removal from God that, that's fine. I don't know. All I know is that I tried to get deep answers on, is there, basically tell me about hell. I encountered some kind of entity on one of my experiences recently, and I was like, tell me about hell. And I had this in my hand at the time, and the thing, it was amazing. It was it was amazingly freaky and terrifying and scary. Um, this thing looked at me through. I was looking in the mirror. I was right in this back restroom. They always say never look at yourself on these plant medicine kind of things, right? But I think it's awesome to do that. To look at your reflection in the mirror, you can see a lot. It's a I recommend anyone do it, honestly. Um, but I was staring myself in the face, and then all kinds of weird stuff happened. A very terrifying creature kind of like popped up behind me or whatever, and I kind of had an idea what it could be, and I said, "Hey, tell me about hell." And as I'm looking at myself in the mirror, my face morphed into what I can only imagine is every human being who asked that being that very question. And like, no joke, I was looking at my face, and my face morphed into a child, like an Asian looking child, and then like a when I say Asian, um, East Asia kind of child, and then my face morphed into like an Indian looking man, and then like a really old person, and then and every time it morphed, there was a different backdrop and different setting, and I didn't quite understand what I was looking at, but eventually I found out, or eventually through this mind meld with this thing, it said, "Who the hell do you think you are to even ask that question?" And I realized, oh, it was showing me a lot of people who had asked that before, and a lot of people that seemed more wise and smarter than me. And I was just like, and I was like, hey, you know what? I'm Andrew. My name's Andrew. That's who I think I am. And I have a friend who wants to know about hell, and I do too, by the way. Um, and this thing told me, he's like, okay, well, I'll tell you whatever you want to about hell, but you have to let go of that. And I was holding this, and he's like, you have to when you let go of this, I will tell you about hell. And I was like, oh, nope. I was like, not gonna do that. And then it's like, okay, well then you can go no further. And I was like, really? I was like, you're telling me I can't know anything else. It's like, no, you gotta drop that. And I was like, okay, well we can't talk here. And that thing mentioned to me something like, hey, what would Jesus do? And he was like, your friend said, you said that your friend needs help and that you want answers. Would Jesus deny God to get that answer? Would he risk? Oh, hold on one second. My wife's coming down. Oh no, no, she may not know that I'm recording right now. Anyway, she's going out to water the plants or something. But anyway, Jesus, or this thing or whatever that was talking to me was like, what would Jesus do? Would he deny himself? Basically, if we, would he deny God to seek that answer? Would he risk hell to get that answer? And this is a terrifying thing to comprehend. I mean, if you believe the Catholic kind of slant on this, he went to hell after he died, right? I definitely experienced that myself on trip 10 beyond infinity when um, I fell into hell with the crucifix on my forehead. God, I sound like a crazy person, but that literally happened when I fell down. The crucifix was on my forehead, and I went down into hell, and Jesus was there, and it was understanding His sacrifice. It is crazy. I was wrestling with myself down there. I was getting into a wrestling match with myself down in hell, and it was very cold and very gray and very just the worst form of sadness you could ever imagine. But Jesus was there, and it was understanding. And I heard that voice that said, "Let it weigh you down." Um, and it was understanding Jesus' sacrifice and him swallowing all that sin and stuff on the cross that I was able to come out of hell. So anyway, going back to that story, I um I believe, gosh, again, I think it's just separation from God. I don't know if we can slap a word on it, man. Like hell is just a word, to quote that movie, The Event Horizon. Um, Wherever that place is, Jesus went there, in my opinion. And but now I'm faced with the prospect of like, hey, let go of this thing and be like Jesus, and then go into hell. I don't know if I want to do that, man. I really don't. I don't. And for all I know, this thing could be tricking me into like, hey, you just denied Christ, and now you're. I don't know. I still think Christ would accept you back and or whatever, but that's something I didn't want to mess with. And at that point, I was like, I don't want to find out either way on this. I really don't. And I was like, I'm probably asking the wrong thing here, um, about hell. And I went upstairs, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. My window, the blinds were open, and there was a thunderstorm out in the distance. And every time a lightning strike would hit, I'd see the face of Jesus. It was amazing. And there's this beautiful crepe myrtle tree that's right next to the window, and right there formed this amazing vision of God. And I don't know, I got this download of like, hey, like, why am I probing about hell? It's like there's something, and then there's nothing. And I what I mean by that is like God didn't have to create anything. He really didn't. Um, he didn't need to create anything. Certainly, he wanted to, and want is a much different thing than need. And it's a much more honorable and amazing thing, honestly, because you can actually, because need is always selfish. It's like, I need this, I need that, I need the, and even when you need for someone else, you're not needing for someone else, you're needing for yourself. It's like, I need you to get a job. Well, why do you need me to get a job? Well, I need you to get a job because it affects me, and I get, I live off of your earnings too, and all this stuff. It's like, I need you to get better at blah. Why? Well, because there's always with need, there's always something that points back to the person asking. But for want is a completely different animal that is absolutely amazing, and much more profoundly beautiful. And because wanting for someone is far different than needing. I can want for you to have something, and that want, sure, I'll feel better if you better yourself, but it's really more on you. Like, I want this for you. Wanting in that way has a moral edge on need. And so so God certainly doesn't need anything. He wanted to create this existence. In that video that I released recently, talking about the um the mechanics of why evil exists in this whole thing. I feel like, albeit incomplete, I feel like I hit the hammer or the nail right on the head. But that's through my own brain, mind you. There was a very incredibly brilliant commenter that swooped in and tore most of that video to pieces in terms of like, hey, you didn't really prove you didn't really answer the question as to why evil exists if God is all powerful and all good. All you did is kind of move the goalposts and didn't answer the question. And he's kind of right. I didn't. Um, but regardless, go watch that video if you haven't. I'm sure you have, Ancient Gear. That to me sums up everything as to why there's bad, mixed in with the good here. I think again, it's a reinvestment strategy kind of thing with God, where because of his limitations of being infinite, and I say limitations because if you're infinite, you can't be harmed, and if you can't be harmed, there are certain experiences that you'll never be able to experience as a completely impervious being, that perhaps need to be updated, right? And so again, I think it's a giant reinvestment scheme of increasing and challenging love and continuing to bolster love. And I think he has an answer for everything. So even this terrible entity that I encountered down there that was trying to trick me into denying Christ or whatever, like he's got an answer for that too. It's going to be an absolutely beautiful one, by the way, based on what I've been told. I haven't been told what that answer is, but I've been told there's going to be an answer for that thing. Um, but anyway, and it's not. And here's the crazy part: it's not going to be a terrifying answer. It's going to be a beautiful answer for everyone involved. But anyway, I get sent down in these tangents and rabbit holes. Sorry about that, but um, I don't know. I was shown in so many. The question of hell just wasn't even a question. It was just like there's something and then there's just nothing. And I am so thrilled and happy that there is a something and that love is an integral and central part of this something. And there's a lot more to this story. Like I could have made that video about why evil exists, if God is all good and all powerful, kind of thing. I could have made that an 8 hour long video because there is so much freaking more to that story. Free will is an absolutely critical cornerstone to this. The only way that reinvestment strategy works is if God introduces a degree of autonomy into the system, a stone that he cannot lift, an admin override code that overrides the admin override code. So what I mean by that is like he has to inject himself into the system, but also within that detach himself from that. So the entity, the organisms that he's created down there can't consciously know. They learn it eventually, but they can't consciously know, at least from the start, that they are kind of the same thing. They're a different kind of version of him. But you gotta make them to where they don't know that, and then give them a degree of agency to where you're surprised and you encounter things that you otherwise wouldn't expected, and you're challenged and all this stuff, and there's limitations on you. So free will is an absolutely integral part of that. But free will wasn't only created for us; it was created for other things too. And when I say other things, God, I sound like a crazy person, y'all. I really do. I'm sorry. Elohim, angels, whatever you want to call them. I know that's again sounds crazy, but theoretically, if there are other beings that live in other higher dimensions that are closer to God, so to speak, or at least they're in the so the analogy I talked about where you have these essences of things like love and beauty and life and free will, right? That it down here in this reality, we only experience the like 1% of the iceberg, and that 1% of the iceberg for these things are paradoxical and dichotomous because of the inherent flaw in existence as introduced through the spoken word of God. That's the only way existence could have taken root is through imperfection, and that's why the mechanics of a word, you have the perfect thought in your head and then you speak it, and there's a point loss in translation, point of failure. That's the source of all imperfection in existence. And anyways, these icebergs of essences like beauty and love and life and free will and all this stuff, again, we are in the 1% of that iceberg. Our version of free will is a flawed, paradoxical version of it, where free will and predestination seem like they're different and conflicting things, but they're actually not when you go and see the rest of the iceberg, right? Um, what I'm saying here, I know that's a word salad that I just threw out there. What I'm saying with this whole thing is there are other things that got a higher slice of that iceberg. Um, so take free will, for example. these higher dimensional hypercosmic beings um, got a more powerful and more potent, closer to the source version of free will. And their version of free will can usurp and take over our free will. And on one of my experiences, God told me that's part of the giant conflict, is one of those things did something with our free will that was out of line. And God stepped in and said, "Nope, that is not how we do things here." And that thing got upset, and and I don't know if that thing thought it was doing a good thing. Yeah, that's the impression I got, is that this thing came up to God and was like, "Hey, look what I did with people and humans. Look what I did." And God was like, "You just stepped over the line with this thing called free will, and that's not cool." And then that thing got upset. Um, that's and then it's been taking its revenge on both us and God ever since. And we are innocent parties in this, by the way. Um, it uses us to do its bidding. It uses our free will to do its free will. If we were never if and this is an impossible analogy from the start. We human beings know, we know no different, that we know nothing different than this. If you are born into a vacuum and there is no, so, well, obviously you would die if you were born into a vacuum. But let's say that you could not be harmed and you couldn't die, right? You're born into a vacuum and there's no external stimuli that can screw with you here. Your will is 100% the will of God. It's the very second that you draw breath. Okay, and by the way, God, this is what God told me. He told me when I asked him, "Hey, God," I asked him one time. I was sitting right here, uh, uh, not this February, but the February before. Um, I said, "Hey, God, how does free will and predestination square up in existence? Because I know both of them to be true. Free will seems less true, but I ultimately still do believe in it." But I was like, "Hey, God, how does free will and predestination square up?" And he looked at me and said, "I am free will." And then he followed that up by saying, "I am you and you are me," so on and so forth. And it follows, it's a he also said, "Everything good you see done, uh, happening in the world and stuff, that's me." And I was like, of course, in my head, I was like, "Okay, well, what about the other stuff?" And he was like, "Well, you already know the other stuff. I already told you. That was a long time ago when I told you." And of course, what he told me on my previous experiences is that evil is a parasitic infection that, again, this analogy with the ants, um, the goal. So, if you don't remember this, I forget the name of the organism, but it's a parasitic roundworm that lives in the Amazon or something like that. And it reproduces inside of a bird. Once the bird once the little parasite in the bird gives birth to a larva or whatever, it lays its eggs and the larva are hatched or whatever, it comes out and the poop of the bird lands on the forest floor, but you know it's got to get back into a bird, right? So it infects an ant. It overtakes their nervous system and it literally gets the ant to go against its own will, because it's hard to say if a ant has will or not. But anyways, it gets the ant to climb up a tree, stick its butt up in the air. Its butt swells up and looks like a cherry or like a berry or something like that. Bird comes along, eats the berry. It was, told to me very clearly, very, very clearly on trip number 5 and trip number 6, that evil is a parasitic infection that is out to get the big fish, the most influential of us, so that there can be a super spreader event where it infects even more and more people. Think of your Adolf Hitlers, think about your Mussolini's, anyone who's super influential and charismatic or whatever, that can rile people up and get people to kill as many people as possible. That's ultimately its goal. And if you're not influential or charismatic, it doesn't matter. It'll still infect you and ruin and kill your life. Sorry, they'll still infect you and ruin your life and kill you and try to get as many people killed in the process. Just so long as you're dead, it doesn't matter. But either way, it's trying to get to the big fish. And It's all in the pursuit of sticking a giant middle finger in God's face and in our face. Um, and so we're the innocent part of this thing, y'all. And I encountered it a couple of weeks ago. I had an experience, and something happened to me that is really, really not cool in that experience. Really, 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 really not cool. Really shook me up, and it was that thing. And uh, all I can tell you is that this thing, it can shape shift into us, and it can live out its jollies. It wants to do things, and it does it. That's all I can tell you. And it takes you over and does those things. And um, didn't expect to get emotional there. It's not our fault, y'all. Is what I'm trying to say, and Jesus knows that, and that's part of the reason why He did this. It's a big reason why He did that. It's not our fault. Anywho, um, it's a big mess, and God knows it. And there's going to be an answer for it, and it's going to be a beautiful answer. He created, he really let the cat out of the bag when He created free will. Ultimately, y'all. And I firmly believe that He did it as a way to check Himself. Like the infinite knows everything, right? So let me do something where I can't know everything. And He let the cat out of the bag with free will, and the some of it anyways, I don't know the rest of the story, because there's obvious giant gaping contradictions in what I just said, and where this endpoint may resolve itself. The giant gaping contradictions, and it's a giant, honestly, a giant game of cognitive dissonance. Everything I just said is an absolutely amazing, uh, magical story for a person with addiction that has done terrible things in his life to absolve himself of guilt and responsibility. So take what I say with a grain of salt. I am a very gifted storyteller. The powerful plant medicines coupled with a very gifted storyteller could very well result in in a crazy, well, sorry, crazies goes without saying. Powerful plant medicines coupled with a creative mind who is very good at storytelling, y'all, could result in an unbelievably, amazingly beautiful story that absolves anyone and everyone of all guilt. But you know what? That's what this dude was supposed to do. That's the that's what blows my mind about Christianity. It blows my mind is probably the wrong uh, phraseology. It saddens me. The thing that saddens me about Christianity is that a Christian can look someone in the face and say, well, first, I mean, sure, let's definitely repent. Sure, we should try not to sin. It's good to strive towards goodness and greatness and all this stuff, but there's so much judgment and hatred in Christianity. It saddens me, and it people take this guy and what he did, and they try to I don't know, y'all. This we don't know people's story. We really don't. I watched the Menendez brothers. It's called Monsters on Netflix. I watched that documentary, or it's not a documentary. It's a TV show. It's a series, like a docu series, drama series. Everyone needs to go watch that freaking show. It provides you every side of that story, and that's what I ultimately got out of this, is that everyone has a story. I am of the mindset that those brothers were heinously abused by their father. Then in the movie, it shows that their father was heinously abused by his father, and so on and so forth. And it's like, I'm not saying that it's justifiable by any means what they did. I'm not saying it's right by any means what they did. I'm just saying that I think we could all find ourselves on either side of that abuser and abused coin. Given the right carrots and sticks in our lives, we would be those people, just like you would be the freaking executioner in a Nazi concentration camp or the person being executed. If you're born into the wrong time in the wrong place with the wrong carrots and sticks, you could be either of those people. And this guy knows that. He knows the illusion that we live in. It's a stacked set of illusions within illusions within illusions. It's like a giant freaking movie. Um, your life is not what you think it is. If the universe itself is an illusion, what is your freaking life? The story of your life. It's a script. It's a movie. But guess what? There is a central truth underlying just about every um, work of fiction. And God pointed that out to me one day on another experience when He told me this amazing central truth at the heart of the movie Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And it wasn't judgment that he was talking about either. It wasn't like, oh, judgment day and the end of the world. The central truth that he pointed out to me was absolutely something beautiful. And it's going to make me cry because it's so beautiful. What he said was, as ridiculous as that movie is, with all the Terminators with the freaking glowing red eyeballs and their laser guns and the flipping shotguns and jumping, liquid metal and all this stuff, you strip all of that crap down, you remove all of the fiction from that, and what do you got? You got a story about a Terminator who goes back in time, is programmed to go back in time and save a human being. But because of his programming of being a Terminator, all he knows is terminate, terminate. But there's a little part of his in his code that is designed to infiltrate humans. Why? Because it makes him a better Terminator. If he can mimic humans and pick up on their mannerisms and their kind of understand their psychology a little bit, he can blend in better and kill more people. But guess what happened? What happened is he comes in and his programming supersedes his own programming by observing love in human beings. He discovers love and he terminates himself to save that. The Terminator who's supposed to kill all people terminates himself to save John Connor, and in so doing, save the entire human race. It was unbelievable. Now it's like, well, what's the Terminator? It's like, so you're telling me that God wants to kill everyone, and he got reprogrammed to save us instead? It's like, no, 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 no. But I guarantee you, people look at God as the Terminator, and that there's that amazing scene in Terminator 2 where Sarah Connor, who's feared the Terminator her whole life, she's trying to escape from that mental institution, and she rounds the corner, and there's the Terminator right at the end of that hallway. And she's like, "Oh, I'm dead. We're all dead. He's going to kill us." And what does he do instead? He protects her. Um, that's a very beautiful symbol for God. It's like the guy is infinitely powerful. He could turn you into ashes in a split second, and it's like, that's a terrifying thing. You take the Terminator, you multiply it by 11 billion, quadrillion, infinitely billion, billions, and that is the potential terminated terminatorness terminatorness of God. And he protected her instead because love and beauty and all this stuff is worth protecting. Um, well, I really went off on a tangent here. Uh, but anyway, in so many words, sorry I got so emotional. Um, such a weird episode here, and I haven't really been reading comments. Last time I read comments, y'all, I apologize that I'm not today so far, but I'm gonna go read them now. But that's kind of the full picture of what I got was that um certainly life and existence isn't what you think it is. I hate to plant seeds of insurrection and people wanting to tar and feather me and carry me out on a rail and kill me and murder me and flay me alive. By the way, none of this stuff Christians. Um, but what I'm getting at is there's y'all, people wrote this. Spiritual warfare is a real thing, and people whose heads were the battlefield of spiritual warfare wrote this. There may or may not be stories in there that compel human beings to kill other human beings. Just throwing that out there. There may or may not be stories in there that, on cosmic levels, call for people to be killed. Spiritual warfare is a real thing. Now, why do I still have this book if that is in fact the case? The reason I still have this book and reference it every now and then is because we all have to cherry pick in our lives. We have to. We cannot absorb and entertain and take and fold into our psyche every single thing we come across. It's impossible. The only way to be truly open-minded is to do that, is to absorb everything, right? Well, we can't do that. We have to cherry pick everything, and that's why I think that there is enough truth in this that I have it. But otherwise, gnosis, y'all. Find it in your heart. Find God in your heart. Find Jesus in your heart. But if it's not Jesus, oh well. Like, find, because again, like he said, he is we and we are he. And so, like, if you find the essence of that, he's life itself, is what he told me. If you find the essence of that, you're good, so to speak. All right, let's catch up on some comments here. Sorry. Remember, he was, sorry if I went off on a rail, y'all, there, and sorry if I cried a little bit. The funny thing is I didn't want this to be. I was going to go with a completely different message today, completely different. I got humbled in so many ways in the past 2 weeks, specifically by a guy, one of the commenters on Facebook, one of the commenters on YouTube, who represents the old me totally. He's a atheist, agnostic, kind of teetering between the two kind of thing. And I did this channel to reach people like that. I wanted to reach the old me and say, hey, look, have you thought about everything? Have you really thought about everything? There may be something that you didn't think about, and there may be something, there may be enough that you didn't think about that may hint towards there being some kind of divine something or other out there, right? And I feel like I've done a pretty dang good job of logically and kind of pseudo scientifically pointing that out, until I have the audacity and gall to release a video claiming that I know the answer as to why evil exists, if God is all powerful and all loving. And this guy, it, it's like he's like an old me, and the old version of me, atheist and agnostic, but far superior in terms of intellect, man. Like, I usually can find a little chink in the armor on someone if we're getting into a debate that I can wedge myself into. But even if the person's smarter than me, there's always, like, they always leave like one little thing where I can just go, nope, you screwed up. This guy categorically across the board wiped his ass with me, y'all. I learned a lot. He ultimately showed me that it all basically boils down to solipsism, in a way. You see something that's beautiful, right? And this is another thing that was told to me recently on an experience. It's like this. I had this incense burning right here on this bookshelf, and the incest was incest. Wow, the incense. Did I say incense? Wow, the, incense was burning, like these little sticks or whatever that you. I forget what you got. Like, for the little things that you light on fire and stuff. These things right here. Let me just. These guys. I lit one of these on fire there, and as the smoke was wafting up the bookshelf, and it's creating these really beautiful ribbons of smoke that were swirling and swirling. And I actually got some footage of it that I'm going to post on YouTube at some point. It's really beautiful. And I was just amazed by how beautiful it was. And I heard a voice, or not necessarily heard a voice. I heard an understanding. That's a better way of saying it. It's like something told me. It was like I said, "Wow, that's beautiful." And a voice basically told me, "Is it that? Is it the smoke that's beautiful, or are you beautiful?" And that's kind of the point that this guy on my, you know, that who's thrown me for a loop. The older version of myself with far better argumentative skills and far more well read on philosophy and science and all this stuff. Um, you know, that's basically what his argument was: is that all of this is yourself, and there's no way you can make a link to the divine, and there's no logical way to link that, nor much less scientific, which is kind of what I was trying to kind of do. And I knew all of that was completely pointless and futile going into it, but I still gave it a shot. I was like, if there's any fruitless effort that is worthy of the futility, it's this. And I got lost in that and thought I could do it. And but that's what this guy's point has been, is that there's no proof, and there never will be, and it's always going to be in your head, always. And so therefore the beauty is you. um God is you. Your recognition of any kind of pattern out there. And I understand that there's stuff like emergence, superconductivity, and stuff like that seems to emerge from nothing, but it still takes the human recognition of the pattern to even call it emergence, and for us to use that superconductivity for our benefit. um, there's no way you can prove otherwise. There's absolutely no way you can prove otherwise, unless I get hit by some kind of divine epiphany that will set me apart from any other human being who has ever lived on the planet. And I don't think that's going to happen. So my attempt at trying to prove God with all these logical, I'm chasing my tail. Um, anyways, he very brilliantly pointed that out to me, and I ultimately was like, yeah, you're right. I still think that I'm correct, right? I still think that all this stuff about the logos and the spoken word of God and the imperfection therein, and there being these cosmic forms of beauty and love and free will. I still think I'm right. There's just no way I can prove that, and no one should believe it lest they experience it themselves. Okay, let's catch up on um, the comments here. No, I don't think. I don't think the Asian kid was wiser and smarter. Yeah, fair enough. I was just seeing. Well, no. I do think that. So, Ancient Gear, you said I don't think the Asian kid was wiser or smarter than you. I did pick up on a vibe of like whatever this thing. When I was looking in the mirror and I saw the different faces of the people who asked that same question before I did, the thing that was showing me these faces was basically telling me, hey, a lot of people smarter and wiser than you has sat down and asked that question. Who the hell do you think you are? Um, so that thing was at least trying to tell me that these people were smarter than me. Okay, late to the stream, but glad I caught you. DB, glad I caught you too, man. I think you and Ancient Gear. Oh no, it says I think there said there was 4 people, but at one point y'all were the only ones on it. So love y'all, love y'all. According to religious people, According to religions, people are judged by God because of bad actions in their lives. Even those who sin do it because of trauma or because it gives them pleasure. Why would someone be separated? I don't think that God separates us. I think we separate ourselves. Um, that's kind of God will always honor free will, always, and I feel like that we are given the choice. Um, I think that I firmly believe that when we die, we are delivered the punchline of our lives, and of existence itself. And then the real answer, as much as I try to pretend like I have the answer on why evil exists, I think I'm on to something. I think I've pushed the conversation in a direction where it probably maybe hadn't been pushed before. God, listen how friggin' egotistical I sound. But I did research. I haven't found anyone mentioning something about imperfection being a product of the spoken word, like the metaphoric, hypercosmic, higher ordered metaphoric equivalent of spoken word by God, that being the source of all imperfection in existence and evil being a part of that. I did a lot of research. I haven't found someone who mentions that, but um, so what I'm getting at here, I just got lost a little bit, but what I'm getting at here is yeah, that's what it was. I firmly believe that we are going to be shown and given the punchline of our joke and of all of existence. We're going to be told all the little micro things in your life and macro things in your life, and then the summation of your life itself. All those little micro jokes rolling up to to the large joke that is your life. There's going to be a beautiful punchline to that, and then that's going to spill over to your life as part of all lives and all of existence and how it all pieces together. And that question of why there is suffering is going to come up, and there's going to be an absolutely beautiful, unbelievably freaking beautiful answer for that. And it's going to be something so simple. It will have been right under our noses our whole lives, and we just never noticed it. And then we're going to be like, oh wow, huh, how about that? And the more we think about that, it's going to become more and more amazing until you get folded and melt into the infinite that is God. That's going to be our last little parting gift as we fold into His infinite glory. But I still think that we probably will have a choice. And I think that there probably may be some people that are so bitter that even through all of that beauty, they may be able to say no and turn away. Um, but I still believe that I personally believe that hell isn't permanent. It is not eternal. I don't care what this freaking thing says here, y'all. I've really well, sorry. Before people in Houston, Texas come out and tar and feather and kill me, I do believe or I do care what's said in here to an extent. I cherry pick. This, in my opinion, rings more true than that. Now, Jesus still talks about hell in here, but I don't think hell is meant for us. I think it's meant for something else. And regardless, I still think that it's not permanent. So yeah, I think that God will always honor free will, and we have the choice. And what choice do we have? And once we see that amazing beauty, unless you're so resentful, you know, He'll let you do. Unless you're so resentful, unless you're so resentful that you turn away. My guess is that you won't. And Jesus is certainly a part of this. I mean, I freaking saw Joseph Stalin in a vision of heaven that I had one time, and that was right. Now, granted, that was right after watching a video about a guy from was it Hezbollah that you know killed people. He admitted to killing people and like all this stuff, and he committed one of the worst sins imaginable in Islam, and Jesus came and forgave him. And he's like, "How can you forgive me?" And Jesus shows him a whole landscape of millions of people behind him, and he was like, "I've forgiven." And the guy said, "I felt all of their sin." And he basically was like, "There was some really nasty stuff in there." And Jesus looked at him and said, I've forgiven all these people. Why would I not forgive you? And again, it's like, I don't understand what's so hard about this. It's like this guy forgives all sin, all of it. Um, let's get according to this, I don't think a person suffering wants or even knows enough to choose to be separated. I agree. I don't think so. Ancient Gear. I don't think a person suffering wants or even knows enough to choose to be separated from God. That's a good point. That's once again that it's going to make sense in my opinion. We're going to see how it all fits together. It's going to make sense. Justice is not for us. Together, it's going to make sense. Justice is not for us. Justification is for us. Justice is for these things that are usurping and overtaking our free will and making us do absolutely terrible things as a giant middle finger, to God. That thing, that's the justice. Us pointing to other people and say, God, this person did that to me. That person did this to me. Make that person pay. God's gonna jump in here and say, no. Do you know why that person did this thing to you? Here's why. And you're going to hear that person's story. And that story is going to break your heart, usually. And then he's going to point out how it's not really that person who did that to you. It's not really him or her. It's this thing over here. And this thing is the thing that's going to pay for that. But again, I was also told that there's a beautiful answer for that thing. And it's how anyways, let's go disco snails. I don't know what disco snails means, ancient gear, but I'm gonna look that up. So Satan wanted good for us in the beginning. Yeah. Oh, that's a very good question, ancient gear. So Satan wanted good for us in the beginning. Quite possibly. Quite possibly. I don't know. All I know, I don't know enough about that story, and frankly, I'm a little scared to try to find out. Because whatever this thing did to us, again, it had something to do with free will. God told me, well, actually, it was this guy who told me. Jesus told me when I was on MDMA, by the way. Jesus told me he was telling me this amazing stuff, and I felt this encroachment on our conversation, like something was trying to come in and disturb it. And Jesus was telling me, he's like, don't, and it freaked me out. Like there's like gravity waves where, and Jesus's voice was distorted a little bit, and I freaked out a little bit. And he's like, hey, don't worry. He's like, that thing, he can't hear us right now. He can't hear our conversation, but he really wants to come in and screw with this conversation right now really bad because he knows I'm about to say something very important and he can't stand it. But he told me in that conversation, Jesus told me part of that story. And that story, what part of that story was, he said, that thing did something to humans that involved our free will. And if my understanding of this, of that thing's version of free will and how it has a much more potent and more powerful hyper cosmic version of it that can overtake your free will, your puny little free will, I can take a wild guess what that thing that he did probably is, but he didn't tell me. Jesus didn't tell me. He just said he did something with free will to humans that was over the line and not called for, and God put his foot down apparently, and that thing didn't like it. That's what I was told. I don't know if I want to figure out what happened. Honestly, I'm going to I'm going to stick with my guess. I dare not probe into the cosmic forms of free will to find out yet, unless I'm called to do so. What if that stone is a point of no return for humans? I don't remember the stone that you're talking about. Okay. All right. Let's get into DB. Neil Donald Walsh explains the coexistence of free will and predestination. Question pretty well. Oh. Okay, I'll look that up. Neil Donald. Let me take a picture of that. I don't know if it saved the comments here. I'm gonna look up Neil Donald Walsh. Awesome. Good stuff, man. Thank you. Because this has probably already been covered before, or maybe it's not a paradox. I keep thinking of it as a paradox. By the way, this commenter on YouTube that I say outsmarted me like crazy, he even schooled me on what a paradox is, y'all. It's like paradoxes again are also just in the mind. Like in the human mind. It's like paradoxes are actually kind of resolved out in nature. It's just our ability to understand them, applying the human mind to that otherwise paradoxical thing is what makes it paradoxical, but it's resolved itself. Black holes exist, right? Um, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but so it may be that free will and predestination are not, maybe they're not that hard to reconcile. Okay, one could argue that those that are controlled by evil first allow themselves to be controlled with the bad channels they opened using their free will to do. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, I see where you're going with that, Ancient Gear. Absolutely, we have to shake hands with it, man. The only way that it can truly overtake you is if you. What did God tell me? God told me that the only reason why I found him and I've had such beautiful progress with God is that I sat down with ayahuasca and I opened myself up at the right time for the right reasons and opened myself to the right thing. But we oftentimes sit down and open up ourselves to the wrong thing at the wrong time for the wrong reasons. So yes, and when you do that, these things can enter into you, including God, including Jesus, but and more terrifyingly, these other things that mean to kill and destroy and rape and murder and blah blah blah. And what's the DNA code of it? It was seduce, infect, spread, kill. That's what it wants to do. Um, So if you open up yourself to the wrong things at the wrong time for the wrong reasons, that's what you get. And yes, you are absolutely right. We do take a willful kind of um we do willfully go there, but it's through trickery and seduction mostly. And um this guy knows that. Again, he knows that. And so does God. And you could argue that he is God. And he is. But he's not, but he is. And so are we, but we're not, but we are. Um the most important thing to remember is that we share in the divine. So bask in your humanness to an extent, but also bask in your godliness. Sergio is banana. What's up, brother? Woo, my boy Sergio coming through, hitting me right in the heart. I love you, man.